Okay, I want to get to the ideas behind what we do to make sure that the problems do not take over. And the main idea I want to get across is that that teamwork must be taught. We cannot assume that it happens. I said this a little earlier about intentional versus accidental, and this is one of the ones I had in mind. If we just give an assignment and assume that the teamwork will be learned, it will not actually be learned. So the things you see on the screen, these four qualities, are qualities of a team that is functioning, where the team is doing the work appropriately and the dynamics of interpersonal relationships are not a problem. In that instance, what we have is positivity, everyone is oriented towards the product, they support each other, and they're open with each other about the progress, my feelings. If things start to feel unfair, they talk with each other, and so on. So it's not enough to just hope that these things happen. I think what we need to do is communicate these to the students at the beginning of the project. You tell them, here's your team, and I expect you to do all of these things with your team. I expect you to be open to each other about moments when you feel like there is a problem. So some of the other features I could have, some other skills that I could have put on the screen, I'm just going to read them to you, but they won't be a surprise. Things like communication. You tell them as a team, you must have effective and good and frequent communication. You must coordinate things like scheduling. You must teach conflict resolution as well. You must tell them, number one, that you're going to sometimes have conflict, and number two, that there are ways to mitigate the conflict. And we have different strategies for how we teach conflict resolution, right? Sometimes conflict simply means that you're talking to each other and not really hearing what the other person is saying. It could be you're pretty similar to each other after all, but the words are getting in the way, or the personality is getting in the way, okay? So sometimes having someone separate hear both of those sides can clear that up. Other times the positions really are different, and I think it's important to communicate that not only must somebody give, I think maybe both parties have to give. Why the metaphor is middle ground. Nobody's going to get everything that they want, but we're going to have to find something that we can agree upon. And then problem solving. A team ideally is working towards solving a particular problem. It looked like there was a question here a moment ago. No, okay. So here we are at my second green takeaway, which is a little formula I use to explain the work of teaching. I'm oversimplifying the work of teaching. Teaching equals CPA. It does not stand for Certified Public Accountant, those of you in the business world. It stands for something else. Content, practice, assessment. When we teach, we must give students content. Otherwise, it's just the same stuff they already knew when they came into class. We must let them practice it somehow. Because just hearing it is not enough to make them know it. They have to be able to practice it. And then finally, we must assess that they can do it so that I have evidence that they've learned it. Content, practice, assessment. Okay? Anything that I teach, you teach biology, there's content you must give them. You must let them practice the biology work, and then you must assess that they can do it. This is a pretty easy formula, right? You agree this is the work of teaching? So what I just said was that teamwork must be taught as teamwork. It's a subject. So you're teaching biology, you're also teaching teamwork. So you must have teamwork content. You must have teamwork practice, where you maybe dedicate some class time, maybe a little scenario or a case study where they talk about how to mitigate conflict or do the practice of doing a team. And then the assessment is clear enough. That's usually the assignment in the first place. You always wanted to give a group assignment. The ideas that I'm bringing to you that might be new, you must teach them about the team and what a good team looks like. You must give them content and make it part of the explicit teaching, not just leave it to chance. Make sense? Okay. Let's switch over to leadership, and I'm going to show you a couple of different leadership theories at the beginning here. some of which are quite old. Is there a question first?
Yes, I have a question. What is the practice with regard to choosing and selecting a team? What do you do in the USA, for example, to choose a team?
To choose a team?
Select and identify team members.
Okay, so how you choose teams, the research on the publications on this are a little divided. And the ultimate answer seems to be choose groups with a purpose in mind, because there could be different purposes in mind. If you choose teams specifically where all the strong members of your class are in one group together and you're only leaving the weak members in their own small groups, then what you have done is you've made a decision that you are going to let the weaker members basically struggle. You're not going to try to help the weaker members. But you are not punishing the stronger members by letting them group together with only stronger members. If you intentionally put strong and weak together, what you're deciding is that you are not going to allow the struggling people to just struggle. You're going to put some help in front of them, basically. You're counting on the stronger people to make the team overall stronger. If you just leave it to chance, well, it's the same sign I showed earlier about chance and intentionality. Sometimes students are going to get the benefit and sometimes not. The advantage to doing it by chance, what that really means is letting the students choose their own partners, and they're going to choose their friends. And that can have advantages sometimes because you're less likely going to have the interpersonal dynamics. They already like each other, I hope. But then you create a new problem. There might not be people in the room who know other people, and so you have to assemble a group that is the leftovers. And that's actually going to be the group that has problems because they don't know each other and they resent being leftovers. It almost creates the problem to begin with. I generally choose the groups for them and do my best to mix the strong and the weak students together. That's the only real advice I can give about choosing a team. Okay. As I was saying, we're going to go through a couple of different leadership theories here, some of which are quite old. This particular first one begins in the 1840s, and you could tell immediately that it's a very old theory because it sounds like something we would no longer say. What essentially this theory says is that leaders are born. Only someone is born to be a leader, and no one can learn to be a leader. You just have to find the person who was born to do this. It's in their blood almost, right? And also it's a very gendered model where it's only the great man theory. So we don't talk about this one very much, but I think it's important to talk about as maybe the starting point of when we start thinking about leadership. Now, one of the next ones I want to talk about is behaviors of leaders. So a different way we could look at, defining who leaders are, or what makes them good and bad leaders, is who they're concerned for. There's some leaders concerned for people, very high concern for people, and high or low concern for efficiency. So someone who's concerned with people and doesn't care much about efficiency looks like this. Someone who doesn't care much about people and only worries about efficiency looks like that. Right? So somehow someone managing to do everything might be over here, although the theory doesn't really give any ideas on how you're supposed to do both of those. More useful is the idea of trait theory, that good leaders have certain traits to them. And it can be useful to realize that good leaders are confident and they are people, right? They are sociable. It's almost always true of good leaders. This is a much more modern view of leadership. It's still about 20 or 30 years old, I think. But it does imply that leaders can be made. You can learn to become a good leader by emulating some of these both behaviors of the last slide and then these traits, what kind of personality you have. So altering your personality to look like a good leader becomes then a possibility. Now, even more modern is the idea of distributed leadership, where leadership is not just at the top, but is distributed throughout the organization, that all people can lead us forward, even if they're not in charge. This is a crucial distinction between being in charge and being a leader, right? You can be the middle member of a team. You have no power necessarily, but you can still be a leader for that team by encouraging the team to move forward and doing the little nudges or taking initiative to schedule the meetings. Even though you're not really the one in charge, that is demonstrating leadership for the team. This is much closer to what modern employers are looking for. And I think it is much closer to what we want students to demonstrate when we give them group work and teamwork in our own classes, right? Where you don't have to be in charge. Just self-identify as a leader. So Google, the organization behind the search engine, this is a vice president for human resources in Google, says that these are the qualities they look for in their managers. So Google is not talking about distributed leadership. They're talking about their managers specifically. And so let's just read maybe the first several. The first idea is that they have to be a good coach. And this is in order of importance. Number one job, be a good coach. Second job, empower your team. It's not really about you making all of the decisions. Let your team make decisions. It sounds like the opposite of being in charge so far, right? You're worried about coaching them. You're worried about making them make decisions. The third one, express interest in your team's well-being and success. It's not until the fourth bullet that we get to productive and research-oriented. So this manager, or this HR person at Google, is saying that good Google managers are worried about people first and efficiency second. So we don't have to agree with the Google manager. In fact, when I put the slide up yesterday, several people in the audience wanted to start arguing with the slide about how it was incorrect, that strategy and vision should maybe come first. And I get it. That's what we often teach in business schools, and it's not wrong. The point I'm trying to stress here is that at this organization anyway, people do come first. It's as a leadership mentality and a leadership mindset that people need to be the first order of business. So you've got several different types of leadership given in front of you so far where, you know, we don't want to deal with the great man theory maybe, but leadership as a set of behaviors, leadership as a set of traits, distributed leadership across different strata, and then finally leadership worried about people first. So the task I'm going to have you do, this is an individual task. I'm going to have you get out some paper, and I want you to draw a picture of leadership without using any words, no letters, no numbers, just artwork. You're going to use artwork to draw a picture of leadership as you understand it. It does not need to be any of those models we saw a second ago. It can be one of them or a flavor of one of them, whatever you want to do. And then, as you see on the slide, the trick is don't tell your partner what you're trying to draw. You're going to make them guess. You're going to draw a vision of leadership, but they're going to guess what your vision of leadership means. So it's going to take a few minutes for drawing and then also for guessing. So go ahead and get started. Let me know if you have any questions.
I'm very poor in drawing.
I know artwork skill does not matter. It's just use stick figure people and lines, arrows. Those are okay. You don't have to have good art skills to do this. So are there any examples where somebody looked at the picture and was able to guess what exactly you meant by the imagery on the picture? Did anybody guess it? It's too hard? It's too personal? No one can guess exactly what it means? So you're pointing at her. Does that mean she was able to guess or she drew a picture? Yeah, she was able to guess. Okay. Hold on, everybody. I'd like to be able to hear from one particular group that they said they were able to guess what was in it. There's always a trouble with group work, right? People get excited. All right, tell me what was in the what did you see in the picture, and then tell me how it was interpreted. Oh no, and the group in the back first. Yeah, that's you. Yeah, at the table. Everybody, please. Thank you. So the leader is in the middle in that particular drawing, and they were able to guess that that person was the leader. And it sounds also like you put the leader in the middle and not on top for a reason, right? So what was the reason that the leader was in the middle in your drawing? Okay, well go ahead. Why is the leader not on the top? Okay, so this vision of leadership is about effective communication with all the stakeholders, not just like one or two people and then it trickles down, because that's sometimes an older and less useful version of leadership. You have another example? He guessed what you drew. So what was on the picture? It was I'm sorry, it was a what? A father figure. Okay, so that's closer to the great man theory. What is your picture?
The picture is that there is a person is taking his team to the top, to the top of the hill, and there is a lot of swinging on their way. There is a lot of big jump on their way.
So where is the leader in that picture? Is it in the front?
The first one.
The first one.
And all the people behind him follows him. They love him.
They love the leader. Okay.
And no one is going backwards. All of them follow the way. So
Right.
they struggle with him to reach the top, but it's not the top. It is the top one, which is probably one of the goals, one of the main goals. And their way is so long that they have a lot of tops to go to achieve.
Okay, so the model you have about going somewhere, maybe especially up a mountain, is a common model in leadership publications. And they do different things with it, actually. So you started with the leader in the front. There are also versions of leadership where the leader is actually in the back, where the leader is the last one to come, sort of leading from behind and making other people, in a way, well, it could be pushing, but I think it's meant to say that the spotlight is on the other people, where the leader wants to stay out of the spotlight, right? Or even leadership from the side, where it's about the rest of the team moving in unison. The leader almost becomes a little invisible in that sense. Okay, so that's another concept of leadership. Now let's talk for a second about why do something like this in your class? That took 5 minutes, 7 minutes to just draw a picture. It seems like something we do in first grade, in primary school, right? We draw pictures. Is this something we would do in college level? Why do that? Why did I do that? Why did I make people draw pictures about something that's a serious topic?
It's probably to visualize a concept that is so abstract.
Okay, so making an abstract concept visual and concrete helps with the cognitive ability to remember it. So this becomes a trick to remember a concept when you turn it into a picture. That's one reason. It's fun, actually, believe it or not, is actually one of my reasons. Do you remember, what is the first two letters of my acronyms for memory? Attention and novelty. How long can you pay attention before your mind starts to drift away? 15 minutes. 12 minutes, 10 minutes, different answers, but it's short. How long are your classes? 50 minutes, right? You lecture at your students, you talk 50 minutes. They're thinking about something else part of the way through. They need breaks. They need breaks. This is one of those breaks, actually. It's fun, but it's also helping them remember it. It turns it into something that they will remember later on. So it's still a useful activity. And it also is a very personal thing when they're drawing a picture. It becomes their way of remembering it visually rather than just in words. Okay. As we saw with teamwork, the view is that leadership skills over time do get better, particularly when there's perseverance and motivation. They have to keep working at it. And then this word, reflection. This is going to come up again in a couple of later slides, but it belongs here. It probably belongs in teamwork as well. That the power of reflection makes them better team members, and the power of reflection makes them better leaders. Okay? When you give them opportunities for reflection, they are able to make connections back to my own life, and it solidifies their beliefs as well as their memories. So I think we've probably covered this by now, but in every case of leadership or teamwork, there are things you have to teach them. There are pieces of content. In the case of leadership, the pieces of content could be those leadership theories, or the one theory that you want to advance to them. In the case of leadership, the practice could be that activities where they demonstrate knowledge of that model. This is the third reason I asked you to draw a picture. I was modeling for you something that you can do with students. If you're teaching leadership to students, that very activity, you make them draw a picture of a leadership model. You could have students do that in their classes, where they then have a practice for their understanding of what leadership is. You see how that works? So it's even though it was a fun activity and reset your own attention, it's also a model that you could have the students do in their own classes. Teaching of the teamwork must be explicit. Don't just leave it to chance. And these are the same factors we talked about earlier. I'm actually not sure why that slide is there. I'm going to take it out for tomorrow. Sorry. In fact, it's in the wrong spot entirely because this is leadership. Excuse me. That's what I thought we were getting to. The takeaway number 3, the third conclusion of the talk, that you should provide content in multiple ways. So when I said that teamwork and when I said that leadership must have content given to the students and the content must be practiced, the delivery of the content ideally happens in more than one place. You could give them readings on it, but as we all know, as experienced teachers, when you have them read it and you never talk about it, it's not very effective. Right? The more effective topics are ones in which you engage in class with them face to face. So lecture is part of that as well. Model it for them as best you can. That's a third way of giving them the content. And then with syllabus, I'm actually thinking about something a little specific later on with a different skill that you can use the syllabus to provide them the content. But I'm not going to revisit this takeaway number 3 later, so that's why it's here. All right, let's switch to oral communication, and specifically English language skills. Let's talk about how students currently get better in English. What is their practice in English right now in your class? 0 for some. As I understand it, let's make sure I've understood this correctly. There are some programs that are taught in Arabic and some programs that are taught in English. Right. Okay. So I'm gonna make a jump here. Even if your program is taught in Arabic and your students will get a job in an Arabic-speaking country, they still need to use English language skills when they have the job, right? Yes? Okay, so it is actually everybody's problem that they need English language skills by the time they leave here, whether it's an Arabic program or an English program. It's going to make them more resistant in an Arabic program. They're going to feel like, this is not fair. Why are you insisting on English for something in an Arabic language program? But that doesn't change the fact they're going to need it after they graduate. So you're probably going to have to make an argument for that. Let's talk in general, not about your classes. How do people get good in another language? Let's say we're all going to go down to Chile and learn to speak Spanish, right? And none of us speak Spanish right now. What are the best practices to become good in learning, in teaching, in speaking Spanish? How do we get good at speaking Spanish? Involvement, as much speaking as possible. Interacting.
To make friends there who can only speak Spanish.
We take turns. What does that mean?
To talk to natives only in Spanish.
Only in Spanish, yes, okay, that's right. So that's the word I was looking for there. As a language teacher, right, with a German PhD, the word we use here is immersion, right? You want to get, it's like being underwater. You're only in that language. You're surrounded by that language. Okay, if you do a study abroad, if we're all going to go study abroad in Chile, then that's easy to do because there's nothing but Spanish around us. There is no Arabic to be found. However, the problem is harder when you're here and you're supposed to be learning English. You still need to do as much immersion as you can. So what are the ways they can do immersion while living here? Little tricks. What tricks can you give them to do as much English as possible?
Well, think in English.
Think in English is a big one, actually. When they're walking across campus and trying to imagine something as simple as like, where do I want to eat dinner tonight? Just make those sentences in your head like you're having a conversation with two versions of yourself in English. That's right. That is a huge one. It's called silent rehearsal. Watch English video to the extent you can. I think you can do that here, right? I have found there are channels here, like NBC2, that is showing all these movies that I know from the United States. And there's Arabic at the bottom, but it's coming in English. So that will help with immersion practice. YouTube, is that what you said? Yeah, YouTube examples? Listen and then repeat what it is that you're hearing. Yes, that's another important one, right? That works for pronunciation and also helps when you're learning a new word, right? So if you're watching those videos like on NBC2 and you hear them say a phrase in English that's new for you, say it out loud again. That's right. There's a couple more in the back. Talking with English speakers like me, native speakers, you become more important. Here's a really hard one that I bet they're not going to think of, and you might not either. Talk English even though both of you speak Arabic.
Very hard.
It's very hard to do, but especially with their friends, they all need to practice English. They should, as much as possible, be speaking English to each other. It's completely ridiculous. This is their country. This is their national language. It's completely ridiculous to imagine they would spend their free time talking English to each other. But I'm here to tell you this works. It is a way of getting better at processing English quickly. And so to the extent you can encourage them to do that, the last couple of tricks are small ones. They're things like changing their habits for when they get information. These days it's often the internet, right? So if they go to websites to learn news, I don't know if our students don't read news anymore, but if they do, then do it in English rather than in Arabic, right? One of your colleagues yesterday suggested you can tell your iPhone to change the interface to be an English interface. It's just English as much as you can rather than the Arabic. And I don't speak Arabic, and so when I walk around and I see these signs, the signs are in English as well. Almost all the signs are in English too. So I know it's a really hard sell to Arabic students to use and speak and read and think in English as much as possible, but that's the only way it gets better. There's two of you. Hold on. Back there first.
I have a question. May I refer them to English references?
Refer them to English references. You mean like...
My subject, I can refer them to English.
Oh, I see. So like if there's a subject that you're teaching and they need more help in the subject, you're suggesting that you don't refer them to an Arabic language help, you refer them to an English language help. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. That will increase their reading capabilities. Now, as it turns out, reading and listening they're called receptive skills, and that's a little easier than the production skills of speaking and especially writing. Yes?
They can play English podcasts when driving or when doing something else. So even if they don't understand everything, they just see the context of the...
Yeah, they can listen to English podcasts, she said, when they're driving. I agree. Surround yourself as much as possible with that other language. It will do little bits of good all the time.